Item number 17, Hillcrest Little Bakery, revised short form PCD, located at file number Z-8684-A, located at 201 and 203 North Van Buren Street. Ordinance number 2475, adopted by the Board of Directors on September 20th, 2011, rezoned the site from R3 to PCD to recognize an existing use and to add a mobile canteen as an allowable use for the site. The site contained a beauty shop, which is operated at 201 North Van Buren. The building was a two-story building with a residence on top of the beauty salon. The site also contained a three-bedroom dwelling located at 203 North Van Buren. The request was to allow the use of the single-family residence with general and professional office uses, or to allow it as a single-family residence. The current request is to amend the previously approved PCD to add a bakery as an allowable use. The applicant is proposing to rehabilitate both buildings and restore them to the original lap siding and historic look, and open a bakery restaurant utilizing the main structure. The smaller structure will be used for storage on the lower level and an efficiency apartment upstairs. The bakery will offer limited seating inside as to not encourage prolonged parking, but to be able to offer a limited number of clients the ability to eat on premise. The site plan indicates the placement of 10 parking spaces to serve the site. The existing gravel parking area will be paved, and the driveway into the backyard is proposed for additional paved parking. The building proposed for the restaurant contains 1,000 square feet. Parking for a restaurant is typically based on one parking space per 100 gross square feet of floor area, which would result in the need for 10 parking spaces. The site plan indicates the placement of a 20-foot drive aisle along A Street and parking stalls 20 feet in depth. The plan does not include placing curb, gutter, or sidewalk along A Street. The applicant notes this section of A only serves this lot and a single-family residence to the east. Along the south side of A Street, improvements were installed with the bank construction at the intersection of A and Jackson. The sidewalk was put in place, which currently dead ends into a retaining wall. The property immediately south of the site is developed as an office use. There is no sidewalk in place along A Street adjacent to the office development. The applicant is requesting a waiver of the radial right-of-way dedication and a waiver of the right-of-way dedication for A Street. The right-of-way dedication will be provided for Van Buren. The request also includes a waiver of the street buffer requirement for the landscape ordinance requirements for the newly paved area along A Street. The area along A Street would require the placement of a street buffer of 6 feet 9 inches, which the applicant has not indicated on the plan. A new paved area is proposed within the rear yard area of the site. The plan indicates a placement of 4 parking spaces. The landscape and buffer ordinance would typically require a 6 foot 9 inch landscape strip adjacent to the paved area. The plan indicates a landscape strip which appears to be less than 4 feet. Staff is not in support of the applicant's request. Based on the applicant's redevelopment plan, the site does not provide the required right-of-way dedications, landscaping, and proper buffering. Staff feels the development as proposed is too intense for the site, and staff recommends denial.
Okay, thank you, staff. The applicant is here. Scott? Yes. Boy, please come up to the lectern, please, and tell us a little bit about your application, but also probably more speak to staff concerns regarding your site plan.
Hi, I'm Scott Loy with Hillcrest Little Bakery. So, do you ask questions first, or?
No, go ahead. You're the applicant.
Okay.
There's no card to speak against you, but staff has expressed concerns about the site plan. Probably just
Right.
best to speak to, if you're not meeting some concerns,
Sure.
we want to know more
Sure.
about that.
If we can get the pictures up, it'll kind of help to verbally Or can we get the pictures up? Yeah, those. I thought I would have a clicker or something like that to walk through them. So
There we go.
sorry. Great. So this is a picture of the house current parking lot that's at 201, 203 North Van Buren. I'm sure most of you are really familiar with this property. It's at a very, very busy intersection here. It's about 150 feet north of Markham and Fair Park, right by War Memorial Stadium. The surrounding area here is commercial for offices on pretty much all sides. But when we start to look south, and you can see here across the parking lot, you see the Markham Suites Hotel. That's actually a reserve parking lot directly catty-cornered across the street for the subway that we're going to look at in just a minute, that's a little bit further down the street. This is looking at the direct across the street of A Street. You're looking down A Street. A Street connects Van Buren and Jackson and basically dead ends right there. The only things that come out onto A Street is the new bank parking lot's rear exit and this particular eye doctor's parking lot or side parking lot. He has parallel parking right here off the street. If you can kind of tell there on the connectivity of the sidewalks on the other side, the sidewalk that was built by the bank actually leads directly into the retaining wall of the eye doctor's property, which forces any kind of pedestrian traffic down onto the street anyway. Now, one of the concerns that the staff has about my property is that I am only providing a 40-foot parking lot, which is required by the city to have a 20-foot parking space with 20 feet behind it to be able to back up. But I've been told by the staff without curbing that would allow the people to directly back out onto A Street, which for all practical purposes is basically an alleyway anyway, only servicing the 4 properties. This is a really good picture of the property right behind the proposed property. If A Street was widened 4 feet by the city to meet their 15-foot restriction, because it's only 22 feet wide right now, it would carry over all the way to the back garage parking lot of the neighbor behind me and cover up that culvert. So I'm being asked to build curbing and a sidewalk to that culvert, just as it is. Can we go back to this? Thank you. This actually shows the parking lot as it is now. And the property is currently zoned for a hair salon, and there used to be a food truck that parked right there on top of those blocks that you saw. If you Google Earth this property, you'll see and be able to count 12 cars parked along that street on that gravel, which is pretty common. I talked to the neighbors. The reason that the neighbors all have signs up that say no parking here without being towed at the owner's expense is because the salon overflow would end up in their parking lots. And they said that was a concern of theirs, that they didn't want to have to deal with that. Hence why parking is such a concern of mine with this property. Basically, if we follow the 35 center off of Van Buren and the 20-foot center off of this with sidewalks, with the landscaping, all the buildings on it have to be torn down. They are of no use. And the building that could be built to comply with city ordinances would have to be smaller than 600 square feet, because you're only going to get 6 parking spots on that property if we're mandated to follow all of the restrictions that the city planning is asking. So it's a catch-22 property. It's a lead-in to Hillcrest. And if you look at these buildings, they're old vinyl siding. They haven't been updated. There's beautiful lap board siding underneath these things. And our proposal is to have these buildings completely stripped and bring back the lap siding look of a Hillcrest kind of home. Develop a small bakery there that would serve, really our specialty item is going to be specialty donuts. So we expect we'll have a lot of in and out. If any of you have seen the Travel Channel, the cooking stations, we're going to bring in more of the gourmet donut type style to Little Rock, is what our hope is. So it will be a very unique type item. We're not anticipating a need for long-term parking needs in a donut shop. It's just not what we're anticipating there. But as it sits right now, the city will allow it to continue to exist as a salon, and we can park a food truck on there and probably have more parking on that property than I'm trying to ask you guys to allocate and allow me to have with the 10 spots that we're laying out. Still giving the full 35-foot rights for the city on Van Buren, the main traffic street, but only asking for the waiver here on the corner. Now, this is looking up towards the property, actually going north on Van Buren. You can see the doctor's office as a lead up to our property. So the break in the city eye flow from the street will not change. We will still have all of the 35-foot radial met for Van Buren. Can we move to the next slide? This is my next door neighbor to the north. It's a chiropractic office. So I don't have a single family home there that I'm worried about. I've got commercial north, south, east, west. The only thing I've got is a rental house behind me. It's the only residential property at all. And I've spoken to them directly, and they have no issues whatsoever. They would have appeared here today. Can we look back down the street? This is, again, looking at the parking lot across the street. One more time. This is a Subway that's actually on the corner there of Markham and Van Buren. They back straight out onto Markham. And I can tell you right now, that's only 12 feet of space behind their parking spaces. And I'm 150 feet away from that. This is looking across at two cars in front of the Subway. That's Markham that you're looking at. That is not a street connecting an alleyway basically between Van Buren and Jackson. And this is just another adjacent view across the street. So our property from the parking lot of Subway looking up the street, you can see the sign to our property. You can see that directly across the street where the Exxon has taken over, there's no beautification, there's no curbage. They have direct access to pull onto Van Buren. And this Subway has direct access to back out onto Markham. So within this neighborhood, I don't think we're asking for anything that's not already existing. And in fact, the improvement that we're bringing to the property in and of itself is taking a property that's basically been barren and has been an eyesore in a lot of ways to the community. And we have a lot of support for what we're trying to do here. It's going to be a significant investment, probably around the neighborhood of $500,000 within the first year. Are there any comments or questions?
Commissioners. Commissioner May.
I've already said too much today, but I'm going to keep talking.
Okay.
Very familiar with it. I grew up on C Street.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many different things have been there in my lifespan. And that's an alley, as you said. I can understand why staff would have to vote against it, but I mean, that's just an alleyway. I remember when the eye doctor, I think it's an eye doctor now, Dr. Black was that built it back in the 60s. The office right across the street from that. But there's no traffic on A Street there, absolutely none. So I'd be in favor of it myself.
Okay.
Other commissioners? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of item 17, including all staff conditions and recommendations therein, accepting the fact of denial.
Okay. You heard that motion. Do I hear a second for that? Second. Okay. If you approve of this application, raise your hand. If you do not approve, raise your hand. That's 6-3.
Hang on just a second.
we're having a procedural issue on the vote,
Sure, I
so
understand.
bear with me a little bit.
We
To
need
be
a
sh-
s-
be
we
sure
need a
properly
second vote.
structure that.
We
Okay.
need a second vote on the request for the waiver of the right-of-way dedications
The right-of-way dedications for A Street, is that
Street.
correct?
and the radio
And
dedication.
the radio dedication as well. Public Works, are you agreeable with that?
And the waiver of the Boundary Street ordinance.
Well, you want that as a separate one too, so we're gonna have three so the first vote we took doesn't count, or we?
It's on the application.
Okay, so that vote's already taken place. So two more votes, two more motions, one for the waiver of the dedication for A Street, and then the second motion will be for the Boundary Street improvements on A Street.
The waiver,
those.
right. And your right-of-ways are your radial dedication and the right-of-way on A Street.
Have you got that?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the waiver of the Boundary Street requirements.
On A Street. Okay. So we're gonna take a vote on that. Do you support the waiver of the Boundary Street improvement requirements on A Street? If you are supportive of the waiver of those requirements, raise your hand.
Chairman, I'll second that.
Second. Sorry about that. Thank you, Scott. So if you support the waiver of the Boundary Street improvements on A Street, raise your hand. And if you don't support the waiver, raise your hand. So that's 2-7.
What was the second one?
The waiver of the right-of-way dedication for A Street and the waiver of the radial dedication.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the bylaw waiver of the
It's not a bylaw waiver.
bylaw waiver of,
You move for the waiver of the right-of-way dedication for A Street and the radial dedication for A and Van Buren.
I move for what she just said.
Does he need to say it? Why don't you try to say it?
I'm not sure.
Anyone else want to take a stab at the a motion? I'm sorry, we're not very technical in legal stuff, so you'll have to. I can make a motion. I move for the waiver of the right-of-way dedication and the dedication of the radial turn there on A Street. And if you, do I hear a second? Okay. So we have that motion for the waiver of the street right-of-way dedications and the radial dedication. If you support that waiver of that requirement, raise your hand. Do you understand? Okay. Okay, that's good. Got to count. Those who do not support that waiver, raise your hand. Okay. So that's 7-2. So your application is approved.